everybody, and welcome from sunny, hot Palm Springs, where I think it's going to be like about 90 something degrees, and whatever that is, 30 something degrees. Absolutely loving it. I might sound a bit nasally. One of the things that are killing me a little bit, having been in Vegas and then in Palm Springs, is just aircon just completely messes up my nasal passages. So I might sound kind of husky and Barry White-esque today. So it's kind of unusual. Here I am on, of course, the Pacific side on the West Coast. So for me, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. So I'm guessing we've probably got lots of West Coasters. I think I've already seen that. So let's get into a couple of housekeeping things. Then I will dive into it. So here I am. This is the Airbnb that we have in Palm Springs. We've been in Vegas. We're actually going to Los Angeles for the day tomorrow because we're taking my mother-in-law Sally. Daughter wanted to see the Hollywood sign, so we're going to surprise her because we're actually doing a helicopter ride over that as well. And then a couple more days here, and then we're heading back to Vegas and home. So next weekend, I get back on Saturday. So Sunday we'll be back to the Sunday schedule for the live streams. One more housekeeping thing. Just remind you that I have a giveaway. The makers of these 0 to 8 hiking shoes have given 2 pairs. So if you scan the QR code, the giveaway ends next weekend. I'm drawing it next weekend. I think I should draw it on the Sunday or the Monday. I can't remember. So enter that if you want to. I've also put a link in the notes of this. So if you want to enter that, they're pretty good shoes actually. I got a pair of those. They sent me a pair, which was very nice. Wore those. Actually, there was a good mark. Actually, bought a pair. I probably should have asked the people to send me some rather than bought those. But anyway, so let's get stuck in. Oh, just a reminder, of course, which most people know, is write the word question before the question. If it's a little bit echoey, I didn't bring my normal microphone, so I'm just using my MacBook microphone, although it has worked okay in the past when I've done that. So let's get stuck into the questions. So Claudia had a bunch of questions. Linnea's got got a couple of questions. So let's get stuck into those. So Claudia, just point at the end there, she's booked the new Celebrity River. You might have seen that they're launching in 27, is it? They had a pre-sale which sold out in 6 minutes. They then went on sale and they sold out. So a huge amount of interest they're creating with the launch into River. I'm really intrigued with what they're doing with the ships. I've read some stuff about the ships. We've seen some sort of renderings. It's hard to see how they're going to pack all of that into those ships. So it's going to be quite interesting to see when we get much more detail. Anyway, Claudia sent me some different alternatives en route. So good to know that you've got that locked in. So Claudia's asking the question, on a Norwegian Fjords cruise, is it worth to extend a typical 7-day cruise and go up into the Arctic Circle, Tromsø? Claudia, if you can, I would. So I'd look at some of the options where you go a little bit further, but you're right, most of them tend to be 7 days. A lot of them will go out, lots out of the UK. You've got some going out of the Holland. I guess some will go out of Bergen and so on. So I would look at ones that go a bit further. So you could look, of course, at your Hurtigrutens or Havilia. We actually had a discussion the other day on my captain's Zoom call, whether is it Havalia or Havilia, because people have been on that and they were trying to remember how it was pronounced. But they do some of those more intensive ones. But I would try and do that. I can't remember what time of the year you're going, Claudia, but also, of course, if you go sort of towards the end of the season, if going up there, you get a chance to see things like the Northern Lights. And some lines will guarantee Northern Lights. So some of the UK lines like Fred Olsen, Saga, which I don't know if that would appeal to Saga. You won't be able to book Saga because they're pretty much limited to only booking UK residents. But some of them will guarantee a Northern Lights. So Hurtigruten and I think HX Expeditions, which is spun off from that, they do sort of a guaranteed Northern Lights. So I've only been to Tromsø once and it was really kind of fascinating getting that far up. And of course, you can then tick off on your bucket list that you have done that. Claudia's asking everybody if they've got recommendations for Budapest and Prague hotels. I've never stayed in Budapest, but I have stayed in Prague a couple of times, both when I was working full time. And actually, I liked the hotel so much, we went back. So Claudia's a hotel called Augustine. I did actually check. It still looked like it open. It's an old monastery, so it's quite quirky. So I think you might quite like it because it's kind of a little bit quirky and unusual. So the rooms are very unpredictable. And it seemed to me it was a pretty good location. So have a look at the Augustine. It may not be to your taste. And I've just suddenly had a brainwave. I have actually stayed in a hotel in Budapest. When I was working full time, I stayed in, I think it was the Hilton. I do remember now. The Hilton, and I always forget which way around. I think Buddha is the one side and Pest is the side that has the castle and all that on the top. And I did once for work stay at the Hilton, and they actually upgraded me because I checked in really late. I'd arrived, gone to meetings, gone out to dinner with people from the office. And then when I checked in, they gave me the presidential suite, which is really annoying because I got into the room at like 10 o'clock at night and I was being picked up at 7 or something in the morning. So, but that had incredible views down to where all the riverboats and stuff are. So I'm guessing you think of linking to your celebrity cruise, but have a look at the Hilton because that does incredible views down onto either the Buddha side or the Pest side. I can't quite remember. Lady Golfer welcoming me to this part of town, asking if to go into El Paso. So far we have relaxed quite a lot at the pool. We went yesterday to Sunnylands, which was fascinating. We'd been on the ball and booked Sunnylands. For those who don't know, Sunnylands is owned by the Annenbergs, which was a very wealthy couple who did lots of philanthropic work, and they've hosted everyone from Nixon, the Reagans, the Obamas, Queen Elizabeth, et cetera, Arnold Schwarzenegger and stuff. They would host these very glamorous parties, but also they'd arrange kind of get-together. So, President Obama had a summit with Chinese president and all sorts of kind of interesting stuff like that. Anyway, it's very beautiful. You have to be on the board to book the house tour. Then someone asked me a little bit about restaurants. We had to go to Billy Reed's, which for those who don't know, it's a bit like you're stepping into. It's been there since the 70s. It's open. I think it's its 50th anniversary, and we always recommend people go there. And when you walk into Billy Reed's, you feel like you're stepping into sort of like a bit of an old world brothel. That's the best way of putting it. It has the most enormous menu that you can possibly imagine, but it's a bit of an institution. So we went there. Sally, we liked it. We've been to Bill's, which is renowned for having great pizza. I thought it was okay. And we've been to Wilma and Frida's, which I guess is another bit of an institution. So we're starting to play around with that. Of course, we went to the famous Thursday market. Lots of people with connections to Palm Springs joining today, which is great. So Linnea has a question. When on Sun Princess in the Sanctuary, I think you shared there was music playing. Did you hear anything of Princess wanting to create a club-like experience? So that's a good point, actually, because I didn't get a sense that they were trying to create that. But you're right. What they did is they had sort of, music playing, which wasn't particularly intrusive, but it was there, like all kind of, unfortunately, pool decks have. But what they did do every now and again is they would have, like, sometimes it's sail away, or one day when we had a sea day, there was this interesting combo, which was she was a DJ and he was a saxophonist. And they were a married couple, and they played a set for like 45 minutes, and he would walk around with his sax. But no, it wasn't the idea wasn't all kind of get up and party. So certainly when I was on, that was not what it was. I didn't get a sense because it's called the Sanctuary Club, the club thing would, I think, jar. But the good news was they didn't seem to be creating kind of a club environment. So that was good. Lady Golfer, have you cruised South Africa, and if so, which line? I've only sailed Oceania for the past 6 years. Yes, so I know we've had the discussion, I guess, before about looking at alternatives to Oceania. So I have only cruised South Africa once, and I did it on Silversea, on their Silver Spirit. They had one of the nicest itineraries at the time. Oceania does quite a nice itinerary. They used to use, I think, some of their smaller ships that they're phasing out. I don't know, but I feel like, don't quote me, I feel like they started to get Riviera or Marina down there. I can't remember. So there was the two lines that were doing a lot of South African cruises that were sort of home base there. Silversea put Silver Spirit there. Very nice itinerary, a couple of days up, a couple of ports in Namibia, which were very interesting. Then right down to Durban and so on. So you had a chance to do some of the safari excursions. The problem with the safari excursions, of course, is by the time you get to the safari parks, it's sort of 11 a.m., which is really too late for animal viewing, but it's still better than none. And we did see some pretty good animal sites. The other line that was based there, but I think they're shifting, is Norwegian. Now, Norwegian had very terrible reviews, very mixed reviews. I did know some people who went on it, and they weren't very impressed with it. MSC also operates, they're kind of older ships. So the Silversea is definitely worth looking at. Very nice itinerary. They know the region very well, had very good excursions. And I used to have included excursions. Now with the change in their fares, they don't have included excursions anymore, and that they have what they call all-inclusive plus, where you get a credit for excursions. They have all-inclusive, which doesn't include it, and then they have what they call last-minute fares, which come on sale 5 months before. Now, if you play your timing right, you can, because obviously Silversea is more costly than Oceania, but if you play your timing right, you can often get some good deals. So at the moment, and I think it ends in November, they're running 30% and 40% off promotions. I guess, it's kind of, I guess they're trying to hit the year-end targets, but also next month, this month, in the middle of this month, they're releasing more itineraries, and that's why I think they're running the promotions. So you might get a really good deal. I just booked a Silver Whisper, which goes on a route that I had on my wish list, which goes from Papeete, goes around Hawaii quite nicely, and goes to Vancouver. And it was way cheaper than I would be spending on Oceania. In fact, it cost me about the same as an Aqua, Cabin, and Celebrity. So if you play it around, because I've played around with that 30% off, and all that kind of stuff. So it's probably worth looking at those. Let's have a look. Mitzi Craft with Friends, good to see you here again. Do you notice that the volume on cruise ships is loud? I thought it was my imagination until I used the decibel meter app on the phone, 90 to 100. So Mitzi Crafts with Friends, I have found that more on the large resort ships. I've described, I think, in some of my videos, walking onto Symphony of the Seas, or even on MSC, sort of to a lesser degree on some of the Norwegian trips I've been on, is I feel like I'm getting hit by a wall of sound, because you walk into that really big, massive kind of atrium area, and it's just so loud. So I do find those ships incredibly loud, because you've got a lot of people, the space is quite big, but there's a lot of people, and then you've got music and hubbub. So I do find those particularly loud, those bigger ships. I think once you get more into, I don't know which you measured it on, but I found on those more, what I guess they call premium, so your Holland America, Cunard, Celebrity, Virgin Voyages, and so on, I find them less loud, partly because there's fewer people there, so there's not that general loudness. I mean, obviously parts of it are loud, particularly in the evening, live music venues and so on. Once you get onto the Oceanias that we're talking about there, or the next grade up, the Silversea Seaboard, definitely not. So they still will have music out of the pool, but there's just not as many people. But I agree with you. The thing that always strikes me when I head into those big ships is that wall of sound. Absolutely. Lots of people. So Kevin is here. Jeff is here. Good to see you, Jeff. Few tips here on that. Oh, that's just for LA, which is great. Nancy has a question around Crossy Europe. So I've been on, as Nancy says, I've been on Crossy Europe, but you're right, I haven't been on for a while. I've done European river cruising with them. I've done a barge cruise with them, and I did the Mekong with them just as we were heading into COVID. So I still feel very positively towards Crossy Europe. I still see very good thoughts and reviews around Crossy Europe. Now, what I think is good about Crossy Europe is, first of all, there are generally very good value. So if you're looking for a river cruise in any region of the world, because they are spreading more and more and more, they are one of the best value. Now, depending which country you're booking from, you can book in different combinations. So I think I'm right in saying in the US, they tend to bundle excursions in the price. If you're coming from, say, the UK, you can buy a package with excursions or not. So it's a little bit pick and mix as well. So that's also quite good if you're looking for good value as well, and then you can pick and mix your excursions a bit. They have pretty good food, I think, for the price. Obviously it's very French focused. The important thing to understand with Crossy Europe is they are still very French dominated. So generally speaking, even though they're trying to become more international, you do have a bit hit and miss. So I have been on Crossy Europe, for example, where there was only another couple and I, the only English speakers. They would run excursions though in English. They would obviously do briefings to make sure that we understood. When I went on that barge cruise, there was 15 people, or was it 14? I was the only English speaker. So you need to be comfortable with, obviously speak French. They're very welcoming of international guests. And of course the crew, like most European, are very bilingual. It's only us Brits and stuff that are not as bilingual as Europeans. So they still are incredibly good value. The other thing, Nancy, with Crossy Europe is they although they don't have the biggest fleets, I think I'm right in saying Viking has the biggest fleet, but they cruise on more rivers than any other. So they're very good in terms of if you're looking for different options. They have introduced what they call their kind of regular, I don't know what they call it, but sort of regular ships. Then they have their premium ships. So sort of like a 3-star, 4-star. So they have differentiated a little bit, but definitely they are really good value, good excursions, definitely worth looking at. Good sound quality is good. Pete talking about palm springs. Yes, as you come, you have those big wind turbines. Francis, good to see you here. I'm cruising out of San Juan on an Eastern Caribbean on Azamara next fall. Very nice. I've never been to San Juan. What is most worth visiting in San Juan? Good question, Francis. I have been to San Juan twice, and I have only ever strolled around the town. I haven't been on any excursion at all, and I can't remember why I have done that, but why I haven't explored more. So I've only been in the town. The town's okay. So if anybody can do a better job than I am doing at explaining what's to see in San Juan, please leave those comments for Francis. Sorry, I don't have a better view. I think I've got next year I'm doing a Virgin Brilliant Lady, which I think goes to San Juan. So any good tips would be good. Just a reminder, write the word question so I don't miss it here, but let's see. Jay, YouTube, hello from Germany. Hi there from Germany. Excuse me. Have you been on Queen Elizabeth after the refit? I'd really like to hear your opinion. So Jay, I have not been on since the refit. There are a couple of videos. So Helen and Richard of Visit Us, they've been on quite soon after the refit. So I haven't been on now. It's interesting because I was on a podcast recently, which I actually need to publish links to because I think it's out now, with the Sailaway magazine. And they were talking about how the view of being Queen Elizabeth updated slightly been done to target a little bit more the American market, a little bit more apparently, but now they're pulling Queen Elizabeth out of the US. But I haven't been on it. I have on my to-watch list Paul and Carol, sorry, Helen and Richard's video of it. So I don't have more than that. If anyone here has been, Francis got some tips on things in Prague. Dennis has just got off New Amsterdam, very nice. Centrally located Viking. Oh, so lots of other good tips there. Regent Grandeur, very nice. So Warren is just back from Regent Grandeur, which is a very nice ship, absolutely. Diabetic, let's have a look. Sunnylands, so Lady Golf talking about Sunnylands. Billy Reed's is just so good. So yeah, it's if you ever come to Palm Springs, I guess I didn't know about it. Mark had been to it before, and hadn't realized about going to the house, but it's absolutely fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Warren is asking, sorry, just have a slope here. How do you uncover hidden shipboard credit offers? So in reality, Warren, they never really are hidden as such. But one of the things you'll sometimes find, depending on the travel agent, some travel agents will often bundle in onboard credit. So a lot of it is, if you work with a travel agent, asking them if they have any kind of additional onboard credit offers for any of the particular promotions. But you'll normally find, Ron, that the lines will normally advertise them. So one of the things I always use and find quite helpful is I don't know how active you are on social media, but particularly on Instagram and on Facebook. If you are a Facebook and Instagram user, interact with cruise content and certainly follow the cruise lines, because often if they're running flash sales, they will come up on social media. So for example, I won't have it now because we're in October. I was trying to see if there's something on here, but certainly often you'll find also, Warren, at the end of a quarter, you'll often find flash sales may happen. I guess they're trying to hit quarterly sales targets or whatever. But certainly I did notice in the run-up, I'm literally flicking through Instagram to see if I can prove my point. But I got quite a lot of ads coming up for different offers which may have then onboard credit. So I'm gonna, sorry, excuse me, I've got a tickle on my throat. Sorry about that. So now it's into October, so they kind of disappear. Oh, here we go. Right. So will that show up? So this is now showing up in my Instagram feed. So it's probably in reverse because the way it is, but it's got up to $300 free onboard spend per stateroom, book now. So they're doing, so I find often these kind of promotions pop up on Instagram, Facebook. So if you follow the sort of, go on there, follow, Prince, whatever lines you're interested in, they will often pop up, and you'll find they're often kind of just, they're short, sharp kind of stuff. That's what I found. PPPJ, question, slightly off topic. Have you heard that Las Vegas so expensive visitors down 22%? So they're not down 22%, but you're right. Vegas visitors are down slightly, slightly, I guess, up to 7%. The 22% number, which you've probably heard, is people visiting from Canada. So what I've seen in the various media, and also I follow quite a lot of Las Vegas vlog channels, and one of them, Jacob's Life in Las Vegas, he does an update every month, and he has all the official data in, which is quite interesting. He has visitor numbers. He has visitor numbers by the Strip and downtown. He has gambling spend, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, so what they're seeing is overall numbers are down about 7% year on year, and the trend is continuing. But Canadians are down quite significantly. So bookings, flight bookings, which is why you probably heard the 22% number, are down about that level. So I've read various reports, because Canadians, it seems, big visitors to Las Vegas, so they're down. But I think you're right, and there's lots of discussion, because I did watch a video the other day from the I guess he's the CEO, owner of CIRC, which is one of the big new downtown hotels, so near Fremont, who was saying that they are more optimistic about turning it around. He thinks people are pessimistic, but certainly the data from the official data, it's down. Vegas has, I think it's going to be interesting to see, because Vegas has definitely taken the piss, as we would say in the UK, I guess, is, they have just, because, you think you're booking a hotel for X amount, but then they add on obviously all the taxes, and then they add resort fee, which is just crazy. It could be $50 a night. Then they introduced, when we used to go to Vegas a lot early on, you didn't pay for parking. Then they started introducing parking charges. There's the price of things are kind of crazy now. We have been fortunate on both our first visit and our second visit, because both our stays are comped. And the reason they're comped is Mark so last year was quite a big regular visitor to Vegas. He was working in California, would go to Vegas on the weekends. So kind of gambling wise, I went last Christmas, less frequently than him. So we actually got stuff comped with resort credit. So actually for us, it wasn't that expensive, but when you look at stuff, it is expensive. And I think it's going to be interesting to see, because I do feel they've priced themselves out. So, certainly, 20 years ago or something longer, you go to Vegas for a cheap, fantastic thing, buffets and everything was so cheap. And it is definitely, I think they need to price correct. So you can actually get quite good deals. It was interesting, again, in that Jacob and another one called Ruby video, they were talking about lots of the chains like MGM and Caesars, who are most of the hotels there. They're doing these now weekend deals, which are really rather snappy pricing. So hopefully it'll price correct, but it is slightly crazy pricing. Dennis asking the question, sorry. Have you noticed classical music on ships declining? I just stepped off the New Amsterdam and found the classical music was down to a duo rather than a quartet trio on the last cruise. Yes, definitely. I think we've seen, particularly in that traditional cruising category, so that what the cruise line calls the premium category. So, in there you've got Celebrity, Holland America, Princess, you've got Cunard, Virgin, etc. in there. So certainly, Holland America is one of the most notable, because of course they used to have that partnership with the Lincoln Center Stage, which ended. Then they announced they were going to do some sort of ad hoc stuff with Lincoln Center Stage, which was very erratic and seemed to only be on longer voyages. Now, they have recently announced, Dennis, that they are going to dial up classical music a little bit more, rather than, because they were doing a couple of concerts and stuff. So they've said that they're going to increase it. So we will see, but absolutely, on Cunard, you have a little bit more, but less so. So you'll still have the little trios, the string quartet. On some of the, if you go on Viking, for example, Viking definitely have retained more classical music. They will normally have a pianist and some violinists, for example. They will have a fairly steady theme. Certainly when I did that repositioning cruise on Silversea, they had a little bit of it, but not a lot. But yes, it's definitely dialing down. I think, cruise lines are becoming a little bit more obsessed with targeting more families, targeting younger, which I think is also interesting. I've got a video coming out soon where I talk a little bit about how it's really interesting, because we actually have an aging population. So, you see a lot, particularly in the West, we have an aging population. So there's more and more people going to be over 60, but the cruise lines are kind of madly chasing everyone young. It's sort of, well, hang on a minute, there's more and more people heading in that direction. But anyway, so let's have a look. Brian, we couldn't book part of your group. We were on Rotterdam. Hopefully quickly meet you. Good. So I'm sure we'll see each other on board, which would be great. Tina, how do you get travel insurance for a cruise in 2027? I know you book your cruises very much in advance with Sarah, looking at a Regent Mediterranean cruise in October 2027. So Tina, what I do, the way that I do it is I have an annual policy. So every year, it normally updates, I think it ends at about May time. I think I renew it. So I have an annual policy. So the advantage with that is it then covers any bookings that I may need to cancel, because it's within that booking period. So the insurance kind of kicks in when you book it. So the annual policy takes care of that. But you should be able to, Tina, I'm not sure where you're based, but you should be able to take out, if you want a specific policy, you should be able to take out a specific policy. One of the defaults you could do, if you wanted to, is to take out cruise line insurance. Now, cruise line insurance generally, you find it's better to not take out cruise line insurance, but some cruise lines will offer kind of some insurance. So that's one way of linking. I'm trying to remember if Regent do that, but the way I do it is because I have that annual policy covering it. But certainly I know in the US, people that are in the US with things like Allianz, for example, people will take it out linked to a specific booking. Now, I'm not a huge expert on insurance, but that's kind of how I do it, and how other people I've spoken to do it. Let's have a look. Barbara Owen, good to see you here again. Barbara's booked a Coral Princess Alaska 2027 family trip as a small ship sailor, Viking Silversea, looking for tips for enjoying a bigger ship and not feeling jostled. Right. One of the things you could do, one of the things that Princess says, I'm not 100% sure on Coral Princess, but at that class, but I'm pretty sure. But what Princess do, Barbara, is they have a sanctuary. They call them different things on different lines, but they have a sanctuary which is paid for area. So so it's by definition of the name, it's a calmer, quieter space. So particularly when you're going to Alaska, what you will find in Alaska, as you're suggesting, is there will be a lot of families. The ship will be very full, and it will be more rowdy. So certainly when I was on Princess and Holland America, the kids kind of overtook the indoor pools and stuff like that. So one of the things to look at is that sanctuary space, because I think I'm right in saying that you need to be 16 and over to book it, but don't quote me on that. I need to double check that. But that's one option. Have a look and see if they've got a sanctuary space, because that's going to give you some kind of quiet time. The other thing to do is, I'm just trying to think if this, because they don't have any adult specific area as such. I mean, one of the things, that you may want to do, for example, now you may want to dine as a family, is things like dining will tend to be quite busy. When I've certainly been on those, dining early is quite busy. So what you might want to do, for example, instead of going for anytime dining, if you actually booked fixed dining, now that may be more challenging with the family, but anytime dining gets very busy on these, and you end up waiting and kind of jostling and waiting in lines. The advantage with fixed dining, the downside of fixed dining is fixed dining, which doesn't suit everybody. The advantage is you can get a table, I guess, for the whole family, but it's going to feel a little bit less manic because you're always going to not have to line up, go, etc. Those are the main things, but you're right, the ship will be busy. It will, but of course, Alaska is fantastic and you'll be with your family. But those are my top tips for now. If I think of anything better, I will pop those in. Just remember, write the word question so I don't miss it. But here, luckily today, because it's an unusual time, day, the questions are maybe not as often as many as usual, so I can hopefully get through them all and not miss any. Kevin, looking at a 10-day Alaska cruise on Norwegian cruise line Joy. It goes to Hubbard Glacier, in and out of Seattle. Any plus or minuses on this cruise? Okay, so Kevin, a couple of things to look at with Norwegian cruises, or in fact, any cruise that goes out of Seattle is the following. First of all, have a look at the time that you're in each of the ports. So one of the things that, on some of the Norwegian itineraries that I've looked at, but it was on a shorter one, it was a 7-day one that friends had booked that I got them to unbook. That's a word, because they changed to something else. But you'll find they were in port for very short periods of time. So they would go to like Ketchikan, and they were getting there at 6 in the morning and leaving at lunchtime. So not really enough time to see the place. So first thing is, when you have a look at it, look at how long you're in the ports for. So make sure that you're in the ports for a good long period of time, so that you actually can go and do the things that you want to do, good excursions, time to self-explore, and so on. So that's the first. That's the first thing to do. Now, I think probably on the 10-day cruise, you might find that works better. Secondly, have a look and see which of the ports you're going. So, most people, if you haven't been to Alaska before, you probably want to go to Ketchikan, Juneau, Skagway. Now, they are very busy. They are kind of very busy ports, but they're kind of the three kind of big key ports. So you want to try and see if you can hit all of those three, if you can, because in Juneau, you have some great glacier tour options, which will kill your budget possibly, but you have some great up onto glacier, some good whale watching tours. But even so, for much more affordable, you can either get you can do excursions to the Mendenhall Glacier and the visitor center, or you can get some buses that are less costly, but they have some really good options. Skagway, you can do the train, which is fantastic. There's also some if the salmon run is, depending on when you're going, if the salmon run's on, you can get some good bear watching excursions. And Ketchikan, you've got the lumberjack show, which is kind of corny, but it's really good fun. And then they have some quite nice totem pole stuff. So you kind of want to have those included. Now, I'm guessing also you may go to Victoria on the way back, because they have to call it Canada. Now, Victoria is a really nice city, and some of them do very short stops. So sometimes Norwegian will call it 8 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, just so they can tick that box. But if possible, see if you've got a good long time in Victoria, because it's a very beautiful city to explore. It's a very good whale watching as well in Victoria, but it's a very beautiful city. Anything else? Timing wise, if I don't know what timing you, and I personally like going to Alaska at the beginning of the season. It's less busy, a little bit less frantic. But if you still can see a good chance of seeing whales and stuff like that. May is one of the, the chance it's going to rain a lot, whichever month you go, but May into early June tends to be less so. If you really do want to see more wildlife, it tends to be a little bit more sort of August, September time when the salmon run begins. So it's kind of this plus or minuses of both. But those would be my key tips for that. Seattle. So can I say Seattle hotels can get crazy expensive. So once you have locked in that cruise, look at booking your hotels and maybe your flights as well, because Seattle, it's one of the most expensive places for hotels to stay. So I would try and do that. Claudia has a follow-up question on the best time. So it tends to be sort of October time, because a lot of cruise lines don't really sail in the winter. So you find about that sort of October is a really good time normally for that. Some good tips from Dennis on Joy, which is good. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at some chat there, which I think I have done. Lady Golf giving me some insight. You've arrived in the overseeding season when the grass is scalped, and then overseeded with winter rise, so lots of stuff in the air. Oh, that's good. The other thing that we also had, which maybe is linked to that then, is, well, that died down. The first couple of days we were here, we got bitten like crazy. I actually went and got antihistamines in the end, but like we got bug spray, but we were just like bitten like crazy. But it seems to have died down, so that could be why as well. There. Whips Travel has a question: which cutoffs have you been? So hopefully you'll pop that up later. Sam, thank you for the videos, which is very good. Reminds me I should probably do a little promo for my video, which will come out at the end of this. Boca Boys, good to see you boys here. What are your thoughts on Oceania's new Sonata class with 1,450 passengers? Ship looks gorgeous, but too large perhaps. I agree. It's very interesting because, and I think I spoke about it before, generally speaking, I think it's such a pity that everybody's going bigger now. I know in some cases, like with the Silver Sea and Silver Nova, Silver Ray, they're kind of bigger because they've gone into LNG, and the explanation is they need more space to be able to have the tanks and so on. So they've, of course, put more cabins and things in. But it's really interesting because if you look at the kind of the splits of categories, is that small ship luxury, which is really where Oceania kind of sits. The small ship was always sort of defined as like 1,000, traditionally speaking. And that is kind of like quite a nice number. You know, you've got sort of the 700, 800 or so, sort of ultra luxury, going, you know, maybe up to 400 passengers, you know, fewer passengers. But this to me starts to feel like, you know, you're not getting that far off sort of some of the older, I know that must have gone now, but some of the older premium class ships. So I think it's a pity. Certainly having been on Marina and Vista, 1,200, 1,250 didn't feel kind of crazy busy, but that I feel that extra 200 just gets kind of starts becoming more mid-ship size, and some of that luxury, part of luxury for me, which I suspect you guys think as well, is it's about fewer passengers, but like someone was asking earlier, it's about fewer passengers, less lines, more space, etc. So I haven't dived a lot into Sonata class. I haven't actually looked if it's how much bigger, if it's a bigger ship or just more passengers. But I think it's a pity that everyone's kind of nudging bigger and bigger. Tom, watching from Lisbon on the Crystal Symphony, fantastic. Actually, so if you're on Crystal Symphony, I was on a podcast, I mentioned earlier, with Sail Away, with Ritzy Travel Guide, and him and his wife are actually on Symphony. I've been following them on Instagram. Susan Mills, randomly found, yes, because I'm sort of randomly on today. And it's interesting because you're both on Facebook. I actually had forgotten to put the link on Facebook and on LinkedIn, and I did it literally about 15 minutes before we went live. So maybe I should do that more often, because it helps a little bit more spontaneous, as it were. Let's have a look. Question on Silver Sea Antarctic expedition. So Lisa, debating between Silver Sea's Antarctic expedition cruises with or without included charter flights. Thoughts? So just to clarify, so what I think, which I think I might get you to clarify this, but I'll explain what I think you're asking, and then if I haven't answered it, do it. So with the Silver Sea trips, you have to have a charter as part of the trip, because what happens is you normally sail it with, like many expedition cruises, actually, you either fly into Buenos Aires, or what Silver Sea is, you fly into Santiago. Then you group in Santiago. Then they take you on charter flights down to my mind's gone blank. Port Williams. Anyway, I think it's Williams. Anyway, where they depart from. So they do a charter flight which goes from Santiago. You actually change up into Arenas onto smaller planes, which can then land there. Then you join the cruise there. So the charter flights are part of the fare. Now you can theoretically, I guess, you may be able to just join in that port, but it's quite difficult to get to. There's not many flights. So and it's included in the fare. So I would do the Santiago because you're then within the system. You're within the Silver Sea system. Now, what you might be asking, which may be, so that's that. I would do it with the charter flights, definitely. Flying to Santiago, many more options to get to Santiago. What you might also be asking, Elisa, is they do two types of Antarctic trips. One of which is where you sail out from Port Williams, you do the Drake Passage, and then they have the others where, in fact, now you probably stay in the new hotel they've built, and then you do the flight right into Antarctica, and then you join the ship there. So if that's the question you're asking, I would actually encourage you to go with the one where you get on and you do Drake Passage. Now the flights can be a little bit unpredictable. Now once you get more into the middle of the season, less so. But I have friends who did that, but they lost 2 days of their trip, which is only I think 6 or 7 days, because the weather conditions they weren't able to fly. So the people who were on it, they were stuck. I mean, the worst place to be stuck for 2 days, still in Antarctica, before they could get back. When I did it at the beginning of the season, the cruise after us was supposed to, the ship, I was on Silver Endeavour, the ship was actually going to sail to start the flights. Going to sail there empty actually, and then start the flights. But they had to get everybody to board the ship in the port and do Drake Passage because the runway was too frozen to start the flights. So it's a little bit more unpredictable. And Drake Passage is not, there's lots of hype about Drake's Passage, but I wouldn't worry too much about Drake's Passage. Web Travel asking the question, we can't, really annoying, and it's good to see you here, by the way. We can't do the Aero Tramway. Love the Aero Tramway. We're excited about doing the Aero Tramway because I've been to Palm Springs a couple of times in the last couple of years, and we actually didn't do the tramway because we've done it before. Bringing Sally here, my mother-in-law, we had Aero Tramway as one of our things to do. It's closed for 2 weeks or maybe 3 weeks for their maintenance. So it only opens after we've left. So it's really annoying. And it's really frustrating because I hadn't been up the Aero Tramway for a while and I really wanted to do it. So you're right, it's a fantastic experience. For those who don't know, it's really weird because you go up the tramway, sorry, excuse me again, you go up the tramway and then the temperature goes quite dramatically. People will go and they will hike. I think you do some overnight hikes, but incredible experience. And it's a really massive a tramway thing. Tramway car, is that the right word? Sibyl Curacao. We have just booked a 21-day, fantastic, Caribbean 2026 in an aft balcony cabin. Curious your thoughts on those staterooms. So Sibyl, I am probably one of the 10% of people, or whatever the number would be, who are not a massive fan of aft cabins. So most people absolutely love them because you are, as the name says, you're at the back of the ship. You just have this view across the wake of the ship as you're sailing out. And if you're sailing out of port, it's very beautiful. For me, I like being midships. Now, one of the things with aft balconies, you have fabulous views. Often you have bigger balconies, so it's another big appeal to people. So most people, they're very highly sought after. They will sell out really quickly. They're one of the most highest demand. Sometimes they even have a premium. One of the small watch outs, depending on the ship, is there's sometimes going to have a little bit more vibration because you've got kind of, I guess, the rudders and all sorts of things underneath there, depending on which ship you're on. And obviously, if you have rough seas, because of the way ships move, you may have more movement. So we've been on cruises with friends. We were midships. They were at aft cabins. This is not the Caribbean, by the way. So, and we were going through down from Hawaii down. We were supposed to go to Fiji or somewhere, and it was kind of not monsoon, but it was cyclone-y weather. And their cabin was incredibly bouncy. But in the Caribbean, you're less likely to have that. So it's more of a watch out if you're going through periods of very rough sea. So I am in the minority. People absolutely love them. They're fantastic, big balconies, normally nice views, out at the back and so on. Those are my only watch outs. But so Enchanted Princess. So certainly you will find 90% of people will be extremely envious of you. I like being midships, just because obviously if you're midships, also the advantage of being midships is everything is sort of equidistant. And if you're going up to the pool deck or the Lido or whatever, you're going down across the theatre, kind of more midships at the back. The restaurants are normally at the back, so that's a little bit more convenient. But kind of you just have more distance to go. But for most people, they're not bothered about that. How did Kevin have a dessert on us? Thank you. How did Kevin give us a super sticker? Oh, they actually got a name or what it's called, super sticker. Thank you very much for that, Howard and Kevin. Good to see you here. Thank you very much. Someone asking a question. There we go. So yeah, so 8 p.m. to 12 p.m. That was the thing. So you're in. I'm assuming this is a question about the being in Victoria at that very late time. They do have some stuff. You're right. Someone made the point. Is often Norwegian will have some stuff. I was trying to think who I was following recently. Paul and Carol had done something recently, but their time in Victoria was cut short because they had a leak in the ship, and they had to stop the ship for a while to fix it. And so I think their time in Victoria is truncated. But you sometimes can find there are some activities that. So I would take a look at those tours as people have suggested. Okay. So Tom was saying they were on the previous cruise. That was the point about the British Travel Guide. Okay, so they're already off. So that's that. Let's have a look. Here we go. Angie, when you were traveling in the yacht club, did you ever feel the desire to see the rest of the ship, or was staying there enough? Was it worth the extra dollars compared to standard balcony cabin? So yes, you can't really stay in the yacht club, I don't think, because if you want to go to see any of the shows, if you want to go to the casino, if you want a variety of bars, if you want the bigger pool, proper pool, as it were, you need to leave the yacht club. So I don't know anybody. I mean, I'm sure there must be people who never leave the yacht club, but the yacht club, yes, absolutely. I spend a large percentage of my time outside of the yacht club. So the yacht club is more a way of retreating from kind of the busyness of the ship, rather than a destination itself. So you're right. I mean, you do have a pool deck and stuff, so you could theoretically stay there. But if you really want to take the advantage of being on a big ship, which is why I think one would go on the yacht club, yes, absolutely. Now, in terms of the extra dollars, so yes. So one of the things you could do, Angie, on some of the ships, on many of the ships, you can actually do yacht club surprisingly inexpensively because they have inside cabins. So, for example, I was on Virtuosa, and they had maybe 8 or 10 inside cabins within yacht club, which still had all the perks, the butler, the restaurant, etc., the concierge, and reserve seats. So it is pretty good. These MSC ships are very big, so you have some pluses. It's nice to have a dedicated restaurant. The restaurant definitely has more elevated food. It's open seated dining, so you don't have to fight the big dining rooms. It has its own kitchen, has more elevated food, for example. You have the nice bar. The drinks are included. You have really nice afternoon tea, which you don't have in the rest of the ship. So I do think it's worth it. If your budget can stretch it, I do think it's worth it because you get all the pluses of being on the big ship. The shows and all that kind of stuff, and blah blah, casino and big pools. But you can kind of withdraw and retreat into it. So I do think it is a big plus, and certainly compared to other cruise lines that have those ship within ships, it's definitely really good value. Angie has a follow-up question. And in fact, Josie's got a question also linked to Antarctica. So maybe I'll do that. As you can see in the remarks, just arrived back from the gym. So with regard to Antarctica, did you investigate other lines like Atlas and Quirk? So yes, I did. And certainly Quark to me is the most appealing of those two. Quark, I have constantly looked at Quark, particularly their new ships. Is it Aquamarine? Their new ships look very appealing. Quark, of course, has been in the expedition business for a very long time. They have a reputation for having really good expedition leaders, and their newer ships, because their ships are very variable. So I focus more on the new ships, which are a little bit, some of the older ships are a little bit kind of rough and ready. So the new ship, definitely I would look at. Atlas, I have more mixed views about. They are quite new. They've chartered their ships to, in fact, they've chartered their ship, one of their ships to Quark, actually, for Antarctica. So, so the Atlas I have more question marks about, just because they're new and more kind of questions. So personally, though, because obviously you're spending an enormous amount of money. So with Antarctica, the two lines that I have defaulted into is Silver Sea, because they have been, again, in the expedition for a very long time. Laurent Commonbert, I think that's how you pronounce his name. I apologize if I've massacred his name. Who leads the expedition side. They are very, very good at expedition. They have incredibly good teams in Antarctica. So they have people who've been season after season after season. So they know the region, they know the ships. They have captains who know the region incredibly well. So I do like Silver Sea. Again, they have quite a range of ships, because you've got obviously Endeavour, which is really new and modern. It was the old Crystal ship. You've got Silver Cloud, which I have been on, which is a little bit more dated, and Silver Wind, I guess it is. So more varied. I also do look at Ponant. Now, Ponant, obviously it's a French line, but they have, they know the region incredibly well. They obviously have, I haven't been on it yet, but Commandant Charcot, they're a very modern ship. I've been on more what they call the sister ships, so Le Real. I've actually booked to go, they do some unusual itineraries. So they go right to the south, up in New Zealand. So they have some very interesting itineraries. So I've booked that for 27 with a very good deal, because I managed to get in on the day they launched, where they had 30% off and no solar supplement. So they also do some, both Silver Sea and Ponant, also if you're traveling solo, they do on certain sailings, particularly at the beginning and at the end of the season, do no or very low solar supplements. But Ponant, again, have very strong expedition teams, because I guess if you're an Antarctic expert, and you're French, a French professor, whatever, you don't have that many options, maybe. So when I went on Ponant, we had the most phenomenal expedition team, really phenomenal. And they were just on for shorter kind of contracts. But so those are the two that I look at. But Quark, I think, is a very interesting one to look at. And I do know some people who've been on National Geographic Lindblad. I haven't been on that. But those for me would be the ones to really, to kind of really focus on. Bunker Boy's making the point about Vegas becoming a little bit crazy. Okay, so in terms of HX, I'll tell you, Tim, one of the reasons personally that I tend to steer away from Viking and to a lesser degree HX is one of the things that they tend to have slightly larger ships. So one of the things in Antarctica is you really ideally want to, if you can, and your budget can stretch so far, go on a ship that has 200 or fewer passengers, because first of all, that means they can land in more places. There's more landing opportunities. And also some places you're only allowed a maximum of 200 people on that landing say in the morning or an afternoon, and you're only allowed 100 people out at a time. So some of the bigger HX ships might have 300-400 people. So you have fewer landings. So because they just they can't go to as many places, and so you can only have 100 people out at any one time. So you may have fewer landings than a ship, say, that has 200, like the Ponant and some of the Silver Sea. Now, that's why some people like to go even smaller lines, which have maybe 100 people, because they can do even more. So what I would say, Tim, is definitely, if you watch the videos, you've got lots of the tips. So I would have a look and sort of understand how many landings you're getting, where you're going, and how they do that. And the other thing I would say is follow the packing stuff. Make sure you've got all the right gear. I'm not sure whether HX have the hiring system or whatever, but just get all the gear and go to every single lecture and every single briefing. It is just so important to you get that, because HX obviously have a reputation for, they've been doing it for a very long time. They have a reputation for very good, strong expedition teams as well. So, but just go to all those and be, worry about, rest and sleep when you get back. So that would be the key. If you are sailing across Drake Passage and you're worried about motion sickness, just take whatever you have with you that makes you feel comfortable. That would be my, I guess, I think Marilyn's had a left. Someone asked me about medical insurance. Hope you heard that is I take an annual policy. Really, really important, by the way, when you are booking travel insurance, make sure it has specific cruise cover, which, to your point, Tiahara, that will cover things like evacuation. Also, because obviously the ship will leave you if they need to. If you have a serious enough issue, they'll disembark you in a port, and you'll be in a local hotel and stuff, and you need insurance that's going to get you back home, because cruise line will not get you back home. So really, really important that it has cruise cover. So sometimes I know a lot of people say, well, I've got travel insurance covered by my credit card. Check, because that may not be enough. So Bill's fan 72. So let's look at this. Thinking of an Iceland cruise, which cruise lines do you recommend? So Bill, a lot of it obviously depends on what you're looking for on a cruise line, but a couple of cruise lines sort of do an Icelandic kind of base in Iceland, do a kind of a circuit. So Viking, for example, if that appeals, it's 18 plus, it's obviously a little bit more pricey than some lines, but they base, sometimes they actually have 2 ships there, I might be right, maybe it's 1. They have 2 ships there, and they'll do a Reykjavik to Reykjavik, really good itinerary. They will have really good enrichment speakers, talking about Iceland, talking about the geology, etc. So they would be definitely one of the ones that I would strongly recommend. Oceania, that we were talking about earlier, they do some quite nice itineraries. Azamara, these are all slightly smaller ships, because actually some of the ports have limits. So I think I'm right in saying Isafjorda, will limit the total number of passengers that are allowed to go there. Some of the ports are quite small. So I've been on, for example, it doesn't really exist anymore, but I went on voyages to Antiquity, and the ship was very small. So we went to some ports that even a Viking ship couldn't get into. So you want to try and go on a small ship, because you're going to get a chance to go to more ports, definitely more ports, and smaller ports, smaller out of the way ports. But for me, if I was going to go to Iceland, the Viking would be very high on the list. Now you can do some. So for example, I'm actually doing a sort of repositioning cruise on Celebrity Silhouette, which is going out of New York, goes up through Canada, Greenland, ends in Reykjavik. Now they then do an Icelandic tour. So obviously it's going to be way more cost effective than a Viking option, assuming that you're not going in a suite. I guess probably that's about the same. Assuming you're going in more balcony cabin or an aqua cabin or whatever, or even inside an ocean use, it's going to be way more cost effective, but their itinerary is not as intensive. But what you also want to do, Bill's fan 72, if you go to Iceland, is the 2 sort of key tours that you want to do is out of sort of Reykjavik, you get the Golden Circle, which covers some of the key iconic sites, and then out of I think it's, I don't pronounce that, Akira, you get the Jewels of the North, and they cover off many of the iconic things. So you sort of want those 2 ports on your itinerary. If they are stopping in those where you can do a Jewels of the North and a Golden Circle tour, then you're probably going to see a lot of what you want to see. Greg asking the question, is club dining on Princess worthwhile in your opinion? So obviously, Greg, for those who don't know, so club dining is on, if you go on the new ships on Sun and Sky, they have a different concept. They have the Sanctuary Club, which you can buy into, either go Sanctuary Club or you can buy into Sanctuary Club. Or what they have on the rest of the fleet is club dining. So club dining, you get, if you have booked a suite, you definitely get it. I'm trying to think if you're on a mini suite, you get it. I don't know on that, but you can then buy a club dining program. Greg, it depends on what you're looking for. The advantage with club dining is you can do anytime dining, and you always get a table. The problem is if you do anytime dining on Princess, depending on what you're on, you can sometimes end up having to wait, whatever. It also means that you don't have to do the fixed dining. So I've always found on club dining, it's about the convenience of knowing I want to go to dinner at 7:38, whatever, blah blah blah. You go down there and no issues. They also have embarkation day lunch, but that's not a massive thing, but that's quite handy. So I think it's pretty good. because certainly when I've been on any Princess cruise and had club dining, I've never had to wait for a table. In fact, what they did one time, I can't remember what ship I was on now. Was I on Majestic? I was on Majestic in Alaska. And I went to club dining, and the club dining was full, but they took me to a table, sort of non-club dining area of the dining room. But straight away, I got a table straight away. I didn't have to wait. So that was really helpful. Let's have a look. We're rapidly running out of time. So let me see if I've got. Let me do one more. Maybe try and squeeze in 2 more questions. Sam, what premium brand do you feel is the best loyalty program? Personally, I would say Celebrity, and I'll tell you why Celebrity. So obviously in the premium category, you've got Holland America, Celebrity, Cunard, Virgin Voyages, Holland America. Did I say that already? Twice. So the reason I say Celebrity is because Celebrity across the Royal Caribbean group, you as you build status, it moves between the brands. So so if you go on Royal Caribbean, Celebrity, or Silversea, you effectively status matches. So through a combination of my Royal Caribbean trips and my Celebrity trips, when I went on Silversea, I was like high status. So I got things like free laundry and so on, even though I hadn't really been on Silversea very often. So that's why I feel it's got the best loyalty program. In terms of the individual perks, none of them are particularly earth-shattering in reality. But I like the fact that as you move around brands. Now, interesting enough, last week, Norwegian Group announced that they're going to do the similar thing. But of course, Norwegian don't have a premium brand because they have Norwegian, Oceania, and Regent. So they don't have a premium brand. So for me, Celebrity is the one that I value the most, because as I move around brands, or as your taste change, your status kind of goes with you. Then, of course, what is interesting, what I did is I status matched on Silversea through my Celebrity and or Caribbean. So I got a status on Silversea. Because I had status on Silversea, I was able to status match when I went on Explorer Journeys, because Explorer Journeys only has a short list of lines that they will status match, and they're all kind of premium luxury lines. But I was then able to status match on Explorer. So that's why I felt it was valuable in terms of just its transportation ability, or whatever that is, whatever the right word is. So hopefully that helps, Sam. Okay, GGT, we're sailing into Kobe on Crystal. We have 2 days in port during cherry blossom season. What's the best way to see Kyoto? Private tour versus ship tour, best things to do in port. So I would definitely do, whenever I've been into either Kobe or Osaka, which is what gets you to Kyoto, I have always done a cruise line excursion because it's quite far away. So just being linked is pretty good from that perspective. So I would do a ship tour. They have great ship tours. So I would just do that because you're kind of linked to that. The advantage is because you've got 2 days, you don't have to worry about stressing about getting back. So actually, in reality, in Kobe, I actually, when I was in Kobe, I went to Osaka. So I'd been to Osaka before, but actually one day I did a tour into Osaka, which I found very interesting. And they had some great tours as well. So I haven't done anything in Kobe, particularly other than a little bit around the dock area. So my view would be take a look what your options are in Osaka, because you've got Osaka Castle and other stuff like that, which are really interesting. So I would look at their tour options for Osaka. So thanks everybody for joining me. So Lady Golfer is asking, so Regent is their ultra luxury brand. It's about definitions. Lady Golfer is asking the question. So really, Regent is considered ultra luxury. So they have Oceania, which is sort of their luxury brand, and then Regent is their ultra luxury brand. It's kind of a definitional thing, just the way the industry looks at it. Anyway, thanks so much for joining me. I have a video coming out. In fact, it's probably out now, which is looking at river cruising versus ocean. So take a look at that. I'll be back usual time on Sunday next weekend. Thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it, and have a fabulous rest of the weekend. Cheers.